Hey YouTube, Bob here. Got a package in the mail the other day, and inside is what I believe to be the very first product by a company called HD Retrovision. If you take a look at the name there on the package, HD, high definition, modern, Retrovision, retro being not so modern. So before we get into unboxing the package here, I'll read you the purpose of this particular company, HD Retrovision. It can be found on their website. Their purpose: HD Retrovision's mission is to preserve retro gaming history while improving the retro gaming experience. We're working towards creating products that allow gamers to play their old consoles on newer HD TVs with minimal to no modifications of the original hardware. We share a common passion for classic video games along with other similar beliefs such as being as open and honest as possible. So I'm not entirely steeped in the history of this product that I'm going to show you here, but from what I understand it was originally crowdsourced and the people who bought in early on already have their product. What I have here was available to the public for a very brief time. I believe it was on Sunday, July 3rd. They had their first batch of product to be bought outside of the crowdsourcing campaign. And I think they were for sale for about a half an hour on their website before they sold out. And I was among the lucky few who were able to purchase the first batch of their product. And I think they're going to have some more available later on in the summer. So if you're interested, on the video description for this video I'll post a link to their website, and you can sign up for email updates if you're interested in this sort of product. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get the package open. I actually bought 3 things from them. One is for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and the other 2 are for the SEGA Genesis. Let's take out of the package here. There they are. Ta-da! It's cables. Well, as you heard in their purpose that I read to you, one of their goals is to be able to have their customers be able to hook their original retro gaming systems up to HD TVs with the best picture possible. The best picture quality possible without any modification. And that's the neat thing about these cables here, because in order to kind of upscale the video signal, a lot of times your hardware requires internal modification to the video chip on the motherboard. But that's not the case with these cables, and I'll show you why that is. So this isn't all that interesting. This is just an adapter so that you can use the cable with the video output on the original Model 1 SEGA Genesis, which is my preferred version of the SEGA Genesis. There are 2. There's the Genesis 2, and then there's the Model 1. The early Model 1s tend to have the most robust sound hardware. And the Genesis sound, love it or hate it, it does sound quite a bit better, I believe, with the earlier models of the SEGA Genesis. Plus, I think this earlier SEGA Genesis looks a lot cooler. So I'm going to stick with the Model 1. Then we have the 2 cables here. Looks like I'm going to have to slice through the bags, which have been crimped shut. Okay, so I got both those bags open. Take the cables out. Just at a glance, I got to tell you, these are some of the nicest video game system cables I've ever seen. Very thick gauge wire, both the casing and the individual wires that break out of the end here. So this is the one for the Super Nintendo, and you can tell that this end goes in either the Super Nintendo, the N64, or the GameCube. And from what I understand, this will work natively with the Super Nintendo, no modification required. Unfortunately, with the N64, it was never built to output an RGB signal. And if you take a look at the cables that are included here, we do have a red, a blue, and a green for the video signal. And it's this component connection that is able to get us that good picture. Unfortunately, it will not work with the N64 unless you do some internal modification, which they explain on the HD Retrovision site. So even though you see this, I don't think it's going to work with the N64. With the GameCube, I don't remember exactly what I read a while ago. I think it may work with the US NTSC GameCube, but it will not work with the PAL GameCube. So one more thing we gotta take off here is this piece of packaging. Okay, so after taking off that piece of packaging, you see that there's a small box here kind of worked into the cable. HD Retrovision SNES YpBpR cable. And this is kind of where the magic happens, because somehow, and I have no idea on the technical reasons for this, what goes on inside of this box is what allows this cable to kind of distill the composite video into its individual signals, the RGB for the YpBpR connection. In order to kind of explain what I mean by that, I'm going to revisit just a little bit. This will be a crash course in video signals that I've already kind of covered in my Nintendo Connected series of videos. I'll link that up in the video description for this one if you're interested on what that's all about. But if we kind of go through a brief history lesson here, as far as the connection types that were provided with US consoles by Nintendo, we have RF, which is pretty much known to be the worst. What it does is it takes the audio and the video out of the console on one signal and broadcasts it over either channel 3 or channel 4. And what you get is kind of a darker, not as bright, and definitely not as clear video signal. And the sound is mono. It's not stereo, which is not too much of an issue for the NES because the sound is only ever outputted in mono. But for the Super Nintendo, you'll definitely be losing the stereo audio output. So you don't want to go with RF. If you take a look at the picture that I have on screen here of Super Mario World, you can see that the picture quality is not the greatest. Going to compare that with the next video signal, which is composite video. This is one of the most commonly recognized one. It's the yellow one. And what it does is finally take the video signal out on its own lead. It's no longer combined with the audio, which now is stereo, not mono. And through the AV in on the TV, it's able to show a much clearer signal of the video. But what it does is it takes all the different components of the video signal, and there's a lot, and this goes way beyond my knowledge of TV video signals. RGB, Luma, Chroma, all those things. I have no idea what they are. But what I do know is they are all combined in this one signal. And yeah, the picture quality is better than that of RF, but it's still not the best. It's a composite. It's kind of a combination of everything. Not everything is shown separately. And around the same time that composite video was popular, so was another type of video signal called S-video, but it was not nearly as common. If we take a look at the screenshot here, you'll see how it has improved with the S-video connection. And again, I don't claim to be an expert in video signals because I'm not, but what I do know that this one does is it separates the Luma and Chroma signals. And what that is able to do is give you a much brighter and clearer picture. The pixels stand out on their own more, and there is a lot less blurriness to them. What we are most familiar with nowadays for video and audio connections is HDMI. And of course, HDMI runs on more modern flat-screen HD TVs and on a very select few big tube CRT TVs. But you really can't see the benefits of HDMI on a tube TV because it's just not a high enough resolution. So somewhere in between the S-video and the composite video and HDMI was another format, which was this one here, with the red, green, and blue cables known as YpBpR. And whereas the S-video was able to distill that video signal even further and get the Luma and Chroma signals separate, this one is able to take it down to 3 individual signals, and you get a very clear picture. In my opinion, you're not going to see too much of a difference between S-Video and YpBpR on a CRT TV, but that's not where the guys at HD Retrovision are going with this. They intend for you to hook this up to a modern HD TV through those RGB or YpBpR inputs, and that is where you're going to see the benefit of this cable. And plus, it kind of breathes new life into these consoles. The Super Nintendo and the SEGA Genesis can now be played with a very clear image on an HD TV. And the best part is, you really don't need to do any modifications whatsoever to your console. So if we take a look at the cable here, it seems to be a nice length, very thick gauge for wire. And the nice thing about this cable is it also includes the audio signal. The red and the white are the stereo audio. Now with the Genesis, it's a little bit of a different story. Let's take a look at that one. So again, I'm going to have to take this piece of packaging off. There we go. Got a similar type of box where the magic happens, where that composite video signal is kind of distilled into its separate components there, hence component video. HD Retrovision Genesis YpBpR cable. And like its Super Nintendo counterpart, it has a switch on the top, and you can see that's obviously to affect the brightness. Every TV is different, and it handles these connections a little bit differently. And some users may feel that the video signal that this cable provides is either too dark or too bright on their particular TV, and this switch right here is kind of a fix for that. And you just move it over to the position that best suits your needs. Unlike the Super Nintendo cable, however, on the bottom of this one is a 3.5 millimeter let's see here, jack for audio. And the reason for that is that Genesis Model 1. The Genesis Model 1 does not output both video and stereo sound through its rear port. It outputs video and mono sound. So even if you use both of these audio cables with the SEGA Genesis connection, you're only going to be getting mono audio, unfortunately. If you use a Model 2 SEGA Genesis, no problem whatsoever. That particular output on the back of the Model 2 was updated. It has video and stereo audio out. But with the Model 1 SEGA Genesis, what you're going to have to do is get a 3.5 male-to-male cable and plug that into the headphone out on the front of the Genesis console, and then into this cable, this jack right here in the box. And then these will output stereo audio, which is the most desired. Of course, you're also going to have to use this connector that I explained earlier in the video. This will bring the pin count down from the SEGA Genesis Model 2 to the larger and fewer pin count of the SEGA Genesis Model 1 connection. So there you have it. These are the HD Retrovision Super Nintendo and SEGA Genesis YpBpR cables for modern HD TVs. And before I leave you today, I did just want to show you a quick side-by-side of the RF, composite, and S-video signals from the Super Nintendo Entertainment System showing Super Mario World. And as you can see, as you go from left to right, RF, composite, S-video, the picture gets brighter, it gets cleaner, and as you see in the background, those blue mountains, the individual pixels of the dithering effect for the shadow on the right-hand side gets quite a bit clearer. With the RF and the composite, it just looks like kind of a darker shade of blue. As you see with the clarity of the S-video, you can see that it's just a dithering effect there. It's kind of like a checkerboard, darker blue pattern. And the component video out signal that these HD Retrovision cables will provide will give a very similar image quality on a CRT TV and an even better image quality on an LCD HD TV. And that's preferable to S-video because nowadays S-video really is no longer a standard and it's not being included on HD TVs, whereas the RGB or YpBpR connection is. So that is where the longevity of these cables comes in. Now you may be asking yourself why I'm not showing you screenshots of the HD Retrovision cables that I just bought and that I'm featuring in this video. Well, there's two reasons for that. The first of which is I just don't have video equipment that would be able to capture that YpBpR signal. And the second reason is the guys at HD Retrovision did a stellar job, a much better job than I could have done on their own website. So like I said, I'm going to link that up in the video description for this video. And I do hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, you'll see me then.